Welcome to Camera Shake Podcast, episode 66, the podcast where we talk about photography, videography, how to make photos, how to make videos, and anything that's got anything to do with any of that. Now, episode 66, and we are not in the same place.
And why is that, Kay?
Well, that is thanks to Mr. COVID.
Mr. COVID.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
What did you do?
Well, I mean, it's one of these things, isn't it? My app pinged. We have, like, over here in the UK, we have an app, like a NHS app, and it's pinged. And it basically means that I've been close to somebody who eventually tested positive. So that means, then immediately you have to isolate and all that kind of stuff. So I'm currently isolating, which is why I'm here and not there. But, obviously I've had PCR tests and stuff since, and they've all been negative. So far, it's actually all good. I'm just at home.
So this is part of what they've coined as the Pingdemic, right?
The Pingdemic, exactly.
Yeah. Apparently they're going a little overboard with it, but, it is what it is. They're doing it for a reason.
I mean, the thing is, like, it's probably foreseeable because, if you, like, over here, again, in the UK, the number of cases per day has been steadily rising. Although over the last few days, admittedly, it's been coming down a little bit. But it was like as high as 50,000 positive cases a day. And what that means is, if all of those 50,000 people have an app and then, their contacts get pinged, then all of a sudden that means there's literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who will, get a notification and then have to isolate, for 10 days. I mean, the only thing that I found interesting really was that, the app pinged and it basically said you have to now isolate for 8 days. And now, and it is actually, it's 10 days from the actual event. So from the time when you apparently were in close contact with somebody else. But it also means that for 2 days, you could, in theory, I mean, if you yourself test positive, you could just go around and infect lots of other people for 2 days. That's a little bit weird.
So I'm being attacked by my cat right now. Come on.
Yeah, apparently cats can test positive too. Did you know?
That's true. Yeah,
I know. Yes, I blame it on cats anyway. The whole thing.
Absolutely. So you are you bored at home yet?
No, because I've been busy recording these podcasts.
Yeah. Yes, it has been quite a couple of days, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've been sort of bulk recording a few interviews and stuff, and that's been keeping me relatively busy. And there's other bits. Okay, I still I had to edit some photos, and get some stuff out of the way. So it's actually been all right.
I think I've got a handful of bits I want to get done this week, and then I'm actually planning on taking next week off, like completely off.
Yeah,
nothing, no work, nothing at all, if I can help it.
Yeah,
and just actually have a bit of a break to myself, because frankly, I feel shattered right now.
Yeah.
I did my first week last week of full kind of 9 to 5 style work, doing some teaching, and it wiped me out. Absolutely wiped me out. I'm just not used to doing it like that in that those kind of hours every single day like that. I haven't done it for so long.
Yeah.
That's and I'm still tired from it. And then and I had my first gig back at the weekend.
Okay.
Which was exciting, eventful.
Mm-hmm.
Not from the audience perspective, but gear failures, all left, right, and centre. Even done tons of rehearsals, tested out the gear multiple times, all fine. Of course, it's when you actually get to the gig, it decides, nope, I'm not going to work right now. So my head went for no apparent reason. Swapped that out. That was fine. First song, maybe 16th bar in, my bass just cuts out completely. Completely, no sound, not just dying sound, gone completely. Couldn't work it out. I was down on the floor trying to understand what was going on. Long story short, I had to bypass my pedal board, go direct to the amp, and it was fine. So there's something on my pedal board. I suspect it was actually just a lead had come loose.
Yeah,
pretty confident that's what it is, but that's a bit of tomorrow's job. Kind of investigating that and working out what was going on.
Yeah, see, that's the one thing.
Huh?
Yeah, that's the one thing I really dislike about pedalboards, by the way, is this that there's so many points of failure potentially.
Yes, there are.
And when you're at the gig, there's no way you can quickly work out what it is. You
don't have to. You haven't got the time to diagnose it there and then.
And then what it means
unless
is like
it's clear and obvious.
Yeah, and then if one thing fails, it means the whole board is out of action, which is, I mean, that can basically totally break a gig, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely can.
So it's
I'll work that out. I don't think it's anything major. I'm pretty confident that's all it's gonna have been. You know, knocking around in a case and whatnot. It's just what the cables come loose. I'm sure of it.
See, I've gone the complete opposite way because I've recently started playing in a band. Just with a bunch of guys. You know, I'm just hanging out playing some tunes, and I've gone the exact opposite way. I'm literally not taking any pedals whatsoever. It's just a guitar, a lead, and an amp. And that's it.
God, man. You could walk to the gig.
I could if I could carry the amp. But it's an old valve head, like a tube head. Not head, it's a combo amp actually. But yeah, I mean, that's the idea really, is to just simplify the process. You know, because apart from everything else, I don't want to have to lock too much stuff around, but also I don't want to set up too much gear. I literally just want to, you know, drop the thing in, plug it in the wall, plug the guitar in, and let's go.
Yeah,
you know, so it's all sort of part of the whole simplification thing.
Well, it's funny you say it because I'm toying with the idea of the board. Okay, well, there's two things. One, I'm toying with the idea of not having an amp on stage anymore. Because I use in-ears anyway. Everyone on stage uses in-ears other than the singer, but he's generally out front in front of the PA anyway. So here's my bass there. Plus, he could always put a little bit back through his wedge if he, you know, really, really wants it.
Yeah.
So I'm toying with that idea. So not needing to take an amp anymore and go direct to the desk, but via my pedal board.
Yeah.
Because actually, there's 2 or 3 pedals in particular, plus my wireless unit that's on there, that I use constantly, and that is my sound. It's more my sound than what the amp's actually producing. So that would be ideal, you know?
You know, it's so easily possible nowadays as well, because the amp simulations in a lot of, you know, let's say multi-effects pedals or something are so good that you could totally do that. You know, absolutely no problemo. And you can get a great variety of different sounds, especially for the guitar. I mean, it'd be the same for the bass. You know, it's not that long ago that, you know, that wasn't really feasible because, you know, early amp simulations just weren't really up to scratch. So, you know, like I remember do you remember the days of the pod, like the Line 6 pod?
Of course I do.
It's, you know, it would sound good as long as you didn't actually compare it to an actual amp. And then it'd be like, it doesn't actually sound anything like, you know. But I mean, that's come a long way. So, you know, but you know, we talked about this in the past, of course, about, you know, simplifying the process. You know, in photography, it applies just the same way. You know, whether it's you know, whether it's music or whether it's photography or anything. I think there very often is a good reason for why you want to just strip down everything and just really simplify it, and, you know, go back to the sort of bare bones. You know.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. The pedals that I use for my regular gigging work is actually very straightforward. What I use for that, there's loads more stuff on my board that I use for other stuff. It just made sense to put it all on one board. But really, I'm only using my wireless unit into a compressor, into my Sans amp, which is what's basically giving me that Ampeg sound, but through a GK head. And that's really it. I occasionally throw on some overdrive for certain songs, and a bit of chorus for certain songs here and there, but that's just the odd song. I don't think it doesn't necessarily warrant having that separate pedal there just for that one song. You don't need it. Yeah,
I mean, you know, my pedal board looks a little bit like I've put every pedal I own on the thing just because I can, you know, and so then it turns into like this little monster of a pedal board, and it's like, what's the point? Half of them not even half of them. Most of them I don't use. I just like them.
Yeah.
So and it's different. I mean, when you're recording and stuff, it's different because then of course you can make use of stuff. But the reality of it is that, I mean, there's probably one overdrive pedal which I would consider taking. The only downside on that is, and it's like a little tube overdrive pedal. Sounds really great and it's quite versatile.
The Black Star one.
Yeah, it's a Black Star. It really does sound. It sounds excellent. Has to be said.
I know a couple of people who've got that.
Yeah,
it is nice.
Yeah, it's like it literally. I mean, it really sounds like a valve head. It does sound really good. But it requires external power, and then you start. Then immediately, like, now you've got the pedal and the power supply, and then you need another extension, and before you know it, just for the sake of like one extra pedal, you're now taking a whole bag with you of stuff. And another jack to jack and all that kind of. So it's not just the one pedal; it's everything else that goes around it. Then all of a sudden, and so it's it becomes too much. Or it very quickly becomes too much of a kerfuffle, and it's not too dissimilar from carrying X amount of different lenses with you when you go out on a, like, let's say, street photo shoot or something like that. Where you only end up using one lens for the whole trip. Like, the question is, why did you take the other?
And I think this is the point, isn't it? It's there's a difference between taking stuff because you just might need it and taking extra stuff intentionally because you want to get that shot. It's so you need to be intentional. I think is what I'm saying. You need to be intentional about the gear you take with whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's music or whether it's photography.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I preach this all the time. It's the shooting with intent part. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all fall into that trap, and of course, I think especially, when you're new to photography, or when you're sort of, you're kind of going beyond the basics, let's say, and you want to try and make things more interesting. It's easy to see how you might think, okay, but I've got this prime lens. This could come in handy. But I'm also taking a, bread and butter 24-70. But I also want to take like the 14 to 24, for super wides, because that might come in handy. I might get a cool shot with that. And then, of course, who doesn't always need a 70 to 200? And before you know it, you've got a whole bag full of really heavy lenses, just in case. When I think, with some experience, you get to the point where you go like, well, actually, I'm only going to take the 35 and I'm going to see what I can do with that. And that's my intent.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that you might come across something where you go like, you know what, actually a super wide panorama type of shot of this location would be easy. And I come back with a super wide, some other time, and it'll be like, but then maybe the purpose of that, or the intent of that trip, might be, okay, well, what if I only took the super wide? Let's see how much damage I can make with that, on that trip. So I've done it, actually. I've been to, I went to, this actually goes back a couple of years now, because way before COVID. I went into London, and I wanted to take camera. I wanted to do some street photography. Just, I remember we went to the Natural History Museum. And I thought about it, at first I thought like, okay, I'll do the typical thing. I'll take the 50 mil, whatever. And then I thought, no, hang on a minute. Let me take the super wide, and let's see what I can do with that. Just the one lens. And I could just limit myself to that. And I came back with some really cool photos.
Yeah.
In actual fact, the only photo of mine that ever got featured on a street photography account on Instagram was shot with that. Actually, no, it wasn't a street photography account. It was a black and white shot. Again, I actually can't recall which one it was, but that got picked up and it got featured and performed considerably better than any other of my photos ever did. So,
Well, that's cool though. I never shoot with anything super wide.
It was just, I really love that lens. I love it. I love it for concerts and stuff like that. You get some really cool super wide, panoramic.
Got really nice distortion on it.
Yeah, it does have. Well, yes, when you go to 14, there's quite a bit of lens distortion, but it's not as obscenely extreme as a fisheye. So it's just, it's still something. I think, and it's interesting with humans in the frame. That's actually it can get a little bit dicey, especially when you're shooting at 14, like super wide. Obviously, facial proportions are completely out of whack. People look pretty grotesque, especially the closer they are to the lens. But then at the same time, if that's the kind of maybe slightly farcical, slightly funny kind of photo you're after, then it's perfect for that. And especially like in a concert situation, things are sort of hyper real anyway. So, when you're, for instance, let's say you're really close to somebody. So talk about pedal boards. Like, let's say if you're shooting, you're off the stage and you're shooting the guitarist from a low angle up, and let's say the guitarist has his foot on the pedal board, for example, then of course that foot's going to look huge.
Massive. Yeah,
it's going to look massive. And then everything that's further away, like his head, or the hands of the guitar or whatever, it's going to look a lot smaller. And so you get this like unrealistic looking image of a person, but at the same time, you could also describe it as being like hyper real, and it's sort of, it creates an atmosphere. So it works. In a sense, it works really well for that. But of course, it works really, really well for architectural or like landscape stuff. You can really.
How good is Lightroom at adjusting for that distortion?
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. To an extent, you can adjust for that, for sure.
It totally depends on what you're shooting, right? You may not want to. You've gone for that lens for a reason, not just because it can capture more, but because of that distortion, right? And the concert photography is, I think, a really good example of that. But if you're doing a wide landscape, you might not want that distortion. So if Lightroom's able to correct for that, at least to the majority of it,
exactly. So. Like I said, it does work in a way. It works with people. It doesn't really work very well with straight up portraits. It really, it just looks weird. Although there are, I've seen like dog portraits, for example, where again, this sort of, this kind of grotesque part of it really makes the photo, and it's funny. For architectural stuff, you will need a lot of adjustment afterwards. You need to definitely compensate for the lens distortion and that. But again, you can get some really super awesome images with that. I use that lens a lot for industrial architectural imagery, actually, especially when you got to be a little bit careful on the lens angle and the height of the camera. You want to get vertical lines as vertical as possible. So the thing with a wide angle lens is, if you're shooting a building, for example, you've got a lot of vertical lines, like walls and all the rest of it. So if you're shooting slightly up, so if your lens angle is tilted, all the vertical lines look like they're falling backwards. So you need to literally compensate with the angle of the lens, and then what happens is in the image they'll start to kind of become vertical again. So you want to make sure that that's happening as much as possible. That's also very important when you're doing interior shots where you've got walls and corners. You make sure that you're at the right height and then at the right angle to keep these vertical lines as vertical as you possibly can. And then there may still be a little bit of compensation necessary in Lightroom, for example, because you also have the lens distortion itself to consider, which means that vertical lines tend to bow out a little bit. But it's much easier to fix that in post. And then you get some really cool images that are straight, and feature straight lines. And you can get really.
Have you ever played around with tilt shift lenses much?
Not a lot, no. It's really something. It's something I'm interested in if they weren't so darn expensive.
Yeah, well, they are, aren't they? More expensive than regular pro glass, because it makes sense. The optics that need to be inside those must be stupidly good. But it's a really interesting idea of how they work, and it's a bit mind bending how they work as well. But what if, because you could, let's just say you're outside taking or you're taking an interior shot where you want those lines straight, but you would, in an ideal world, want to be about 10 foot off the ground to take that particular shot to keep it nice and straight. Actually, you could be on the ground and actually tilt or shift the lens, and actually it would seem like that, but from a much lower angle. The other thing I find really interesting about these is actually all cameras were like this years ago when they were bellows. Most of them, they were tilt shift lenses. It was a normal thing, and that's just got lost. It's one of the very few things that I think have got lost in modern cameras. But now, obviously, you can get lenses for it. But no, I've never used one, and I'm really intrigued about it, and can see multiple uses. But also from a videography perspective, the old kind of taking a shot in the mirror.
Yeah.
Right. But you can be off, shift the lens, and actually you can get it in such a way that it looks like you're looking straight into the mirror.
Yeah.
And not that angle that you normally would have to go in at, so you don't get the camera in shot. Things like that would be really interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah, there's a whole range of really interesting things about tilt shift lenses. I mean, one is, of course, the whole miniature photography type of a thing. But if you remember, Joel Grimes shoots a lot of his really wide environmental portraits with tilt shift lens.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what he does is he creates a panoramic image by shooting, 3 images in a row, for example. That means either up or down or across, depending on what kind of image it is. And then the final is really a stitched panorama out of these images. A lot of that's done with a tilt shift. It's something I considered with some of the car photography that we're doing, because to an extent, again, with correction, you can do something similar with just with like an ordinary wide lens.
You can, but you'd have to crop in, I guess, and to get the same degree of resolution. And
well, see, the beauty of it is that, of course, let's say you've got, let's say for argument's sake, you shoot with a 24 megapixel camera. Then, of course, if you stitch 3 images together, you can get 3 times the resolution out of that image. That is cool, and that's really that's the sort of the reasoning behind these environmental portraits, is that you then create an image that's so high res that you can literally blow this up to smithereens.
Yeah. I've done a few. I did a few of those when I went to Sydney to visit my brother to get certain panoramic shots, because I knew he wanted to get a couple of those to blow up onto canvas for his flat that he lives in. So it's exactly, I did precisely that, and they come out really, really well, really, really well. I guess there's that degree of what's the word I'm looking for? I guess using a tilt shift lens for something like that actually just makes it so much just even simpler. So you gotta do is, okay, we'll start over on the right, we'll shift again,
sure,
we'll shift up, and it's nice and easy, keeps it together. It's a convenience for that, I guess, more than anything else.
Although it has to be said that Lightroom's panorama function is actually extraordinarily good.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is good.
I agree, totally agree.
Even I've shot some panoramas with a drone that were actually panoramas stitched together out of, I think, 24 images. So and they came out really damn cool. They were huge files in the end, and you had to kind of crop in a tiny little bit.
Yeah.
But still, the resulting resolution was still phenomenal, and it looked perfect. When I say perfect, there were a couple of things that you sort of potentially have to fix in Photoshop, but literally very little effort required to make them look good.
Does your drone, the camera on your drone, have a panoramic function, so it will move itself to take whatever you tell it to do, however many photos, however wide, 360 for argument's sake, right?
Yeah, it does well.
But will it do it with the minimal amount of overlap?
Yeah. Basically,
that's cool.
So the idea there is basically, the camera, the drone has a panorama program sort of thing. And it's interesting to watch it in the air, by the way, when it starts shooting the panorama, because it literally just, starts sort of moving around.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then, of course, you end up with, again, I can't remember how many, let's say 24 image files. And then there's two options. You can either let the drone stitch the software in the drone stitch the panorama together, or you can just export the 24 individual shots and then stitch it together yourself in Lightroom or Photoshop. And I've tried both, and it definitely looks better. The results are better, much better in Lightroom. So, really all you do is, you let the drone take the shots. It does all the positioning itself. You literally have to do zero. You just basically put it into position, aim the thing, press a button, and off it goes. And it'll take about 30 seconds or whatever until it's done. So, I've done it with. I've actually done that with buildings.
We need to make more use of your drone.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could fly it in more places in this dumb country.
Yeah. Maybe we need to get a smaller one that you can fly anywhere. I don't know how good the cameras are on them.
Not quite as good. I mean, to be honest,
I'm sure.
So my drone is a Mavic Air, and the camera's cool. It's cool. But I wouldn't want to go any lower than that.
No.
If you know what I mean. Because it does struggle.
Mavic Air? Is it the mini version they call it? I might be getting the name wrong.
Of course, now there's the Mavic Air 2, and there's a bunch of newer models, and the cameras have improved, actually, even since I bought mine. But I have to say that there are great limitations on those small sensors, and that's predominantly in low light. Like low light is a killer for those. They're just not really. They really suck in low light, has to be said.
Well, I've seen video footage from when it's not been broad daylight, and it looks as bad, if not worse, than my old GoPro. Once that light has started to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay. You just need to know that about it, and that's that. It's not a big deal. That's its limitation. But all the other benefits are fantastic. Yeah,
absolutely. It's you just have to you take that into consideration. Do you remember when we went to the moors and we shot we shot a version of the Hannah Cousins video? Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. So that drone footage, because the sun was coming down, it was starting to get dark, and that drone footage was really noisy.
Oh yeah, it was noisy. There was no sharpness. The resolution had just gone. Yeah, it was mud. It's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, for instance, if you compare that to what I shot with the same drone over a year ago when we did our little video challenge,
it's like it's a different camera.
Yep. Yeah, it's like a different camera. Yeah, exactly. And that was because it was bright sunshine. It was in the middle of the day. It's performed completely differently. So it's good, it's good for some things, as long as you know where the limitations are. Then there's one of the Mavics, I can't remember now which model it is, that has a Hasselblad camera on it.
Oh, of course it does. Guessing that's quite pricey.
I'd like to try it.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
But I'm tempted to pick one up, but I kind of like the idea of having one that I can actually fly anywhere because it's small enough. And so there's always the option for it, even if the quality of footage that comes from it isn't quite as good as I'd want.
But you still can't fly it everywhere.
It's a weight thing, isn't it? 250 grams, you can fly anywhere still, provided you're not in a residential built-up area. Is that right?
Yeah, as long as there are no other people around, basically.
People are all right. I think it's houses. There's some laws because a couple of my friends have just got them and they've been looking right at it, and they're flying it everywhere without any issues. Literally over houses as well.
That's probably not a good idea. But
rightly or wrongly, I don't know.
Well, so I mean, there was a dude in my local park flying a drone the other day. It was definitely a larger size drone, and obviously he had no idea. I think he must have just bought the thing. He was just sitting in the middle of the park and just flying the thing, and you're like, okay. And of course, there's always this like, I'm always tormented because on one hand, I'm thinking, oh, well, there's actually nobody around, it's not really going to, create that much of a problem. On the other hand, I'm like, well, but that's against the law. So shall I say something? I tell you what, right. So little story there. I don't know if I made a mistake or something, but okay. What's your opinion on this? So my wife and I, we went to the superstore the other day, right, to get some groceries. And it was just before, like, it was half an hour before the store closed, right, in the evening. And there's this dude shoplifting, blatantly shoplifting. And he's in a medical aisle, where all the medicines are. And he's basically shoving a whole bunch of medicines down the front of his trousers, his pants, right? It totally he's not hiding it or anything. It's just like, he's got this really baggy trousers, just pulling the trousers up and just literally emptying half the shelf into his trousers, right?
How were they not falling out the bottom?
Oh, well, and so my wife's like, oh, look at that guy. He's shoplifting. He's not even, trying to hide it.
Yeah.
And so I turned around and he clocked us. Okay. And so my wife was like, well, we're going to have to tell security. I'm like, okay, all right. So we went up to the customer service counter, told them, described the guy. And then, we thought like, okay, we've done our duty. That's it. Walking back. So as we're walking back into the store, the guy obviously clocked us and he must have seen us talk to customer service. So he must have realized what was going on. So he's coming towards us. And as he walks past me, he goes, what did he say? Effing grass. He just walked out. I'm like, don't shoplift. I mean, it's like, oh God. So here's the thing. Do you think that was morally the right thing to do or not?
Yeah, it was. There's no excuse for stealing. There just isn't in any circumstance. Well, there are some situations where I think it can be understood, if not condoned. That's a line from Shawshank Redemption. That's what that's from.
There you go. Well, see,
but it can be understood on occasion.
Yeah.
It can be understood if someone is, perhaps very, very hard up, for whatever reason, is unable to feed their kids or themselves or something like that, and they steal for argument's sake, a loaf of bread, something like that. You can't condone that. You just can't. But you can understand it. I think you did the right thing.
I mean,
I think I would have done the same.
When we came home, we told my daughter, she was like, oh, maybe he needed the medicine, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, they were like skin products and stuff. So, not exactly life-saving.
Maybe he was opening the moisturizer as he was putting it down his trousers and squeezing and just
It's just, it's just a weird thing. But I tell you what, we bought a bunch of bottles, and I kind of thought like, right, I'm gonna have a bottle ready when we leave the store, just in case he's waiting for us. So yeah.
So what, was he just escorted off and that was that?
No, he walked out before they could do anything because he basically clocked us going to talk to security, or to basically no, we talked to customer service, and then they went off to find the security guy in there. And so whilst that was happening, this guy realized what was going on and legged it essentially, and he just kind of just like basically just fast walked out of the store. So he knew exactly what's going on. So that leads me to believe that wasn't his first time. It wasn't his first rodeo, as they say. So
yeah, he does that every week, I'm sure.
There was years ago, before I moved to this place, there was a music store not too far from me, and about 150 yards down the road was a like a secondhand store. Would you call it like not cash and carry? Like
a charity shop,
like a cash converters.
Oh, right, yeah, okay, yeah.
And
like a trade-in sort of place.
Yeah. And so and I knew I was actually teaching the guy who was working in the shop, and he used to tell me like, oh man, the amount of times, like almost every day somebody's trying to shoplift, and the amount of times that that stuff gets nicked. And then what happens is the first thing he does is he calls the cash converter, which is about 150 yards down the road. And, he usually gets, he can talk to them before the guy would actually be able to walk over to the cash converter store. So by the time the shoplifter walks in trying to sell whatever he's just nicked, they would already know about it.
Ah, that's good. God, it's just people are just stupid sometimes.
I know.
It's like, ugh. I mean, why would people go down to the cash converter, which is several doors along from where they've just stolen something, save it and go to another one somewhere else? Right. I know their idea is probably to get rid of it as quickly as they can, but come on, use your head, shoplifters.
Exactly. What's the matter with you, shoplifting people?
That's the sort of thing you see on, worst robberies type comedy, like You've Been Framed style program.
Shoplifters Framed UK.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Oh well. So what else is new? Well, we went on another little test shoot the other day.
Yeah,
that was fun.
That was fun. Yeah. Well, the most fun part was driving the car that we were test shooting on all day.
Yeah, so it's relatively rare, although it's not the first time that's happened. But we had a car for the whole day, and the idea was it was actually how can I put this? Well, we were supposed to do a different shoot, which didn't happen, as mainly because of the weather, I think. And then so as an alternative, we worked this one out, which was basically we had this car and we had it for the whole day. And the idea was to find a location and to do a test shoot. And we just had a lot of time just driving that car.
Yeah, great fun.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just superb fun the entire time. So I think we had it for about 10 hours all in all, if I give or take 9 hours maybe.
And the actual shooting time was maybe half an hour.
maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah. But we just took our time driving around, scouting out a few different locations, not necessarily for use in our test shoot that day, but for anything in future. So we've got a few ideas of what's out there. You spotted a couple of cool abandoned sort of parking areas and whatnot, or garages and so forth, but clearly they were on private land of some description and were all locked off, so you couldn't actually get into them, which was quite frustrating. But that seemed slightly over the top, I have to say. There were at least, all in, I think we found 3 of those areas, and they were all 3 or 4 of those areas that were all completely fenced off, so we couldn't get in. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's nothing there. It's literally open space, Yeah. Right. Such a shame. Wasted land.
Literally wasted
some of it.
Yeah, literally wasted land.
Yeah. Oh well. So, but it was good to see them, know that they're there. Perhaps there's a shoot that we really want to do there in the future, and we can always find out who to talk to perhaps get it open. That'd be
of course. I mean, the cynic in me would say oh, why didn't you get permission? Which to which I would say yes, if we had thought about it in advance.
Yeah,
it would have been possible. As it were, we literally just arranged the car pretty much the night before, and then picked it up and then just spent.
That was always going to be a just head out and see what happens type day, right?
Yeah, we actually got the kind of shot that we wanted to get in the end, which was cool. And I actually had a brief look at it, and it's definitely looking good.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, there's definitely
if it's edited in time, it may even pop up now, but it may not, because it may not be done in time for this edit.
Exactly.
Surprises all around for all of us.
Exactly. So but that was interesting.
It was good. What did we end up doing? 2 light setup, I think, wasn't it? On that, key in a rim, which was good. What was nice is that we were able to test out what we wanted to test out with that, but at the same time not worry about how lit the car was, because it was in a dark wooded area.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily what we were going there to test out. It was certain lighting techniques for the portrait part of these shots, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think the thing to remember is that, with a test shoot, of course, the reason why I do a test shoot is because you want to solve some kind of problem, or a range of problems, or you want to kind of dial things in, or you want to kind of, get a feel for whether your idea could actually work or not, or whatever, and maybe you're testing a new technique or a new piece of equipment, or you just want to get an idea as to, I don't know, lens choices and this and that and the other. And so in this particular case, I think, from our perspective, there were a lot of things that worked out the way that we thought they would work out, which really just solidifies what we're planning for the actual shoot anyway. So that's good. But there were a number of things where we realized that what we had thought, like a diffuser size was actually one thing. So, I realized that actually I needed to, for this to work, I needed a much bigger, much larger softbox. Because it wasn't given me, the softbox that we brought, or the octobox that we brought, just didn't really give us the result that I was looking for that. And that's mainly because, although we're talking about a portrait type of situation, because there's a car in the background, or in the midground if you want, there's still a need for more light to hit the car, I think. And it was actually good that the car that we brought was a relatively dark color, because that's really the scenario you want to really go through. That was one of the takeaways. If I'd really thought about it beforehand, then it goes to reason that I could have thought of this earlier, but really just testing it out in the field just made it very obvious what was happening. So that's a great takeaway for next time, or when it comes to the actual shoot. The rim light scenario really worked really well, I think. That worked exactly how it should.
Certainly what I saw in the back of the camera at the time. Yeah,
it looks really good.
And what was interesting is that was on its lowest power as well, and some distance from me who was in the shot at the time. It must have been 10 foot.
Yeah, so that was really very very directional light. Because the thing about a rim light is, you often think like, okay, well, you put a softbox or strip box on there, that gives you that really nice rim light going all the way, down the side of the face, down the shoulder and the side of the arm and stuff. But actually, for this particular type of shot, the rim light's really mainly important for the side of the face and the cheek, and maybe the neck, and maybe the top of the shoulder. You actually don't really want it to go all the way down, and especially you don't want the rim light to hit the car that much, because then you end up with reflections on that side of the car. Because basically that rim light is on the far side of the car. So you want to make it really directional, so it predominantly focuses on the head. And so, I immediately thought like a softbox isn't gonna do that for me. So we used like a 9-inch reflector on that, and it did it absolutely beautiful. So it's so that worked out really well actually. And then of course the question is just like, how strong do you want that rim light to be? And what I was thinking is that I really just want to have a touch of light, just a kiss of light on it, just to give it a little bit of depth. That's it.
A bit of depth, a little bit of separation from the car behind. And I thought it worked very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, the other thing, and we know this already because we've done similar shoots in similar locations before, is that stuff like that just doesn't work in a forest. Just does not work in a forest.
Turns out shooting in the forest is an absolute nightmare.
Well, it turns out shooting cars in the forest is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Shiny cars. It's a real, it's a ball breaker. You get so much light coming through the leaves and through the trees, and it just ends up in this awful, a lot of reflections on the hood and on the car itself. It just looks terrible. So that is not a good idea.
No, and that's our next major problem to solve for that scenario. And yes, you know, you can put polarizers on. Yes, you can sort of block out some light and whatnot, but that's not necessarily practical to do. No, in some of the situations that we're in, right? Yeah,
and this is where location choice will become extremely important. I mean, it's just not going to happen in a woodland type area, you know, which is cool. Next time we do Robin Hood style portraits, we'll come back to that location.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get out at some point next week when you're out of isolation, and we'll do another shoot on that, and see what happens.
Out of my personal lockdown. That's it.
Your personal lockdown, yeah.
Exactly. Well, what else? I tell you what, we're gonna be at the Birmingham photo show, or photography show, I should say. So the photography show at the NEC in Birmingham is going ahead in 2021. It's going to be from the 18th to the 21st of September. We're going to be there most likely the 19th and the 20th. That's
more than likely.
Yeah. So if you are in the area, or if you're thinking about coming down, and if you're there on the Sunday the 19th or Monday the 20th, come and say hello. You'll see us lurking about somewhere.
Yeah. And one of our previous guests is presenting.
Two of our previous guests.
Shows, isn't he? Two. It's right. So we've got Tommy Reynolds, and who was the other one? I forget.
Alex Bennion.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. So Tommy and Alex are going to be some of the speakers at the show. Should be really super interesting. So again,
has that schedule come out yet as to when they're speaking?
Yeah, it's on the website.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we're there for them.
So if you happen to be at the NEC in Birmingham on the 19th or 20th of September, then again, come and say hello. It'd be super awesome to meet some of y'all. Some of y'all.
All right, New Orleans.
That's right. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to that because I haven't really been to a trade show in what seems like a really long time.
Mm. It's going to be fun. I'm quite excited, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Quite excited.
Especially after the really disappointing news that the Photo Kina is, indefinitely cancelled.
Gone. That's a shame.
Yeah, that was originally
that.
Our plan for 2021 was to hop over to Cologne and go to Photo Kina, but obviously it's not happening. And it looks like it's never going to happen ever again.
Oh, maybe there'll be enough of a backlash that they'll think again in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, let's hope so, because they're always fun. I know there's lots of good reasons as to why it may not be the best idea to run something like that, but it's all, but purely from a punter's point of view, and from a sort of, nerdist point of view, it's always good fun. I've always enjoyed it. I've been to the same convention center in Cologne before. It's actually a cool place to hang out, So anyway, so that's that. What else? There's a number of really cool photography news items I've come across this week.
Go on.
Yeah. So the first one is, do you remember the famous picture of Buzz Aldrin on the moon? And you can see a reflection in his visor. So this famous photo taken by Neil Armstrong. And in Buzz Aldrin's visor, you can see Neil Armstrong taking the picture, but you can also see part of the lander, and I can't remember, you can see a flag as well, or just all sorts of different stuff. So you can see a bit of the moon.
Yeah, I remember the photo very well. This was the one taken maybe in Nevada or something like that, right?
Apparently so, yeah. Exactly. But so the cool thing about this photo is that there's an artist called Michael Ranger. He's a VFX artist, and what he did was he looked at the photo and he kind of went, well, what if we took that reflection and we literally sort of unfolded it and straightened it out. And then we could see exactly what Buzz Aldrin was seeing at the time that photo was taken.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did. And it's
Cool.
really quite amazing. It's very cool.
That's cool. Oh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Why has no one done that before? It doesn't seem all that difficult to do.
No, true. And maybe people have done it before, but he just he did it really well. It's quite, again, it's just interesting. It's a different perspective.
So has he just flattened the image out and it's just an image, or has he created an image in such a way that you literally are seeing what he would see with his helmet on and all of that?
Oh no, it's literally just he's literally just taken the reflection in the visor and then basically straightened it out and corrected it and whatever. And so, but that's cool. That's basically how Neil Armstrong would have, or how Buzz Aldrin would have seen the scene, because all we can see is this distorted image or this distorted reflection on the visor glass.
Yeah. Was the flag moving, or
were
there two different light sources?
I'm not 100% sure whether there was a flag in it or not. There was definitely part of the lander in it.
Don't know. I can come out with about 20 different conspiracy theories about that.
Yeah, I once went to an exhibition at the South Bank, actually, which is a moon photo exhibition, and it debunked virtually every single conspiracy theory to them. Yeah, that was quite interesting.
I've seen so many TV programs and things like that related to it, particularly in the 90s.
Oh yeah,
it was a big thing then for whatever reason. There's things like there's movement in the flag where apparently there shouldn't have been any. There's apparently shadows going in two different directions. The crosshairs that are on the cameras should always be on top of the image because it's just there on the front. That's the way they're done. And every so often the one part of the crosshair creeps underneath the image, stuff like that. What else? Something to do with the blast craters, something to do with the landscape. They then superimposed out on some areas in Nevada and places like that where something like that could be shot, and they match up perfectly. The list is endless.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the big ones is there's this famous picture of Earth basically taken from the moon and there's no stars.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one? And it's like people going, why are there any stars? There should be stars. But it's actually, I mean, this one is relatively easily explainable. I think it's basically, if you set the exposure to expose correctly for the Earth, you won't see any stars. It's really as simple as that.
Yeah, it does seem as simple as that, doesn't it?
yeah, of course. But if you're a non-photographer and you just think, hang on a minute, there should be stars, then it all of a sudden makes for a perfect conspiracy.
I imagine taking shots up there isn't all that easy to do. Wow.
Or shot on Nikon. Is it Nikon or Hasselblad? I can't remember.
Huh. Oh, the back there? Don't know.
Yeah, I need to find out.
Don't know. But yeah, that was a bit of a sidetrack. But we'll have a bit of conspiracy theory on here, don't we?
So have you been watching the Olympic Games?
Nah.
I've seen zero of it.
I've seen not even an image from it. I'm not entirely sure why. I think the start of the Olympics is often a bit rubbish. It's not stuff I'm particularly interested in. It's like taekwondo and I don't know, swimming and certain swimming things, and all that. I'm just not interested in that really all that much.
Do you watch football? Because I mean, I know you like football. But do you watch football at the Olympic Games?
Not often. It's not often very good.
Yeah, because it's not actually the national teams. It's like
no.
Yeah, are they amateurs?
No.
It's an amateur team, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I can't remember the criteria of what you need, what your status in football needs to be able to be part of the Olympic team. But yeah, you're not going to see Premier League players in there.
Yeah,
World Cup winners.
Yeah, I thought I watched the skateboarding thing that happened. I believe it happened yesterday, so I saw it earlier today. And it was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah,
it was a little bit disappointing. The skate park they built looks really good. It's amazing, actually. I mean, it's very, very cool. And of course, the athletes are incredible, albeit very young, like 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds.
No way.
Yeah. But they're amazing. I mean, they're really amazing skateboarders. But it's a bit like it's like a time run. It's a bit that I saw, and it's like, well, this is extremely boring. I want to see them like do lots of like incredible tricks and stuff like that. That's the interesting part about watching skateboarding. But there, it's like, okay, you got to get from point A to point B, and it's timed. And and whilst you're doing that, you got to do like one trick, sort of a thing. And it's like, that's a really boring way of doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, in my view, and that's all I've seen. So there may be other disciplines that I just haven't caught. But I thought it was going to be more like gymnastics, where they get points for different things. So they do their little routine, and then they get like.
Maybe they do that too. Maybe there's another. They have multiple different sort of disciplines, if you like, that they do. Yeah.
So I mean, for what I've seen so far, hasn't really, excited me terribly. But
no, I don't ever start watching the Olympics really until the athletics actually starts.
Yes.
Like that I'm interested in track and field.
But the other thing that was quite, was very different anyway, was to see them, compete in literally empty stadiums. That was like, that doesn't really have the Olympic feel at all.
No.
So,
Wait, I'm surprised they were this close to cancelling them, weren't they? Up until the last kind of couple of days before it was due to start. They were very close to cancelling it due to COVID concerns within the athletes.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I'm very surprised it's actually going ahead.
Yeah. But then you could say the same about the Euros that just happened.
Yeah, they should have never happened, but they should never happen in the first place.
Right.
Like, nobody needs football competitions like that. Immediately we're losing half of our subscribers.
What? I'm turning off. My word. You can't say that.
Well, to be fair, actually, I saw some of the games.
No one needs rugby.
Well, now,
trust me, that's a sport that doesn't need to exist.
Now my wife's turning off.
Along with cricket. Don't need that either.
Yeah, cricket I don't understand. That's just something I don't understand.
They've just changed cricket.
Have they?
They call it. I'll get this wrong because I don't follow cricket, but I just heard something about it there. They call it the 100 now.
Do they call it Jiminy?
Call it what?
Do they call it Jiminy? Jiminy cricket.
Jiminy?
Yeah.
Oh God, that's not even funny.
Well, you got to throw some of those dad jokes in there. Come on.
Oh God, no, please. I'm going to switch off in a second. Yeah, they call it the 100. So it's 100 overs, basically. No, wait. Yeah, 100 overs, and each over has 10 balls in it, rather than I want to say 6 in a normal game. And they've just revamped it all. There's new teams and all sorts going on. New players from abroad playing over here. Total revamp to get people interested in cricket again.
Wait, does that mean that
a bit faster?
Does it mean each match now lasts 4 days rather than 3?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Oh, hello, Kat. You joining us?
Please welcome today's guest on the show.
Yeah,
Katty McCaddison.
You know what? I've given up just putting her down. She might as well just. She's just there. It's going to be a thing.
So yeah, talking about the Olympic Games, I tell you what I always find really interesting about the Olympic Games. So, and that's got nothing to do with the actual sports. It's the fact that most camera manufacturers use it as an opportunity to sort of test new models, especially the kind of high-end, top-end kind of models, the kind of sports shooters type models. So rumor has it that Canon seem to be testing the R3, and Nikon seeming to be testing the Z9, which is the kind of the digital version, or the mirrorless version, I should say, of the D6 with some marked improvements. And of course, those are those are models that I would say in inverted commas everybody's waiting for, because they're like the top end camera bodies for both companies. I'm not really sure who really has that much use for those kind of cameras, because we're talking like, for instance, take the Nikon Z9. We're talking the most likely retail price is rumored to be around the $6,000 to $7,000 range.
Right.
So yeah, unless you're like a hardcore sports shooter, I question whether that's necessarily.
Yeah. That is pricey, isn't it? That is pricey. What's I've seen bits and pieces knocking about on the R3 in particular, but I actually don't know any specs about it. Are you aware of?
Not so much with the R3, but I'm guessing it's not going to be too dissimilar from the Z9. And so the Z9 is rumored to be a 45 megapixel sensor. You often find that with top line, especially with sports photography, is that the megapixel count is going to be a little bit lower, and therefore the frames per second is going to be a little bit higher. So with this one, I think we're looking at like 45 megapixels, and top speed is going to be at 30 frames per second.
Right. Wow.
Which for sports is ideal. I mean, that sounds great to get some pretty high res images, and you can get a lot of them. So it's it's going to have 2 XQD card slots, which makes sense because you need the high transfer speed, especially if you're shooting at that megapixel count and that speed. Other than that, it's like 16-bit RAW. It's got all the other. Any
word on the video capabilities?
I actually can't remember what the video specs are. I think, and of course, they haven't really released the specs yet. These are all just rumors.
Yeah.
And these are like the more or less confirmed rumors, if you want. Because there was one thing a little while ago where they're saying like, it sounds like Nikon are trying out different sensors in this camera, like a 60 megapixel, a 45, and a 30 megapixel sensor or something like that.
Okay.
But it seems that now everybody seems to be agreeing that the 45 megapixel sensor is the one.
So they've just gone right in the middle. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, I think it's it's going to be a really good camera for what it is,
for sure.
But if you're a portrait photographer, that camera isn't really going to do you any favors. I mean, you're sinking a lot of money into something that actually doesn't give you that much of an advantage.
That'll be interesting. I'm sure there'll be reports coming out soon of those using it at the Olympics.
One of the things that Nikon have said is that it's going to be better than the D6.
All right.
Which you kind of expect, because,
I should hope so, yeah.
That's how things go. So
what's the... well, there you go. Thank you, Nikon.
Yeah, the D6, I mean, the D6 was surprisingly a DSLR. I mean, definitely the last DSLR in that range that they'll ever make. There's no coming back to that. So...
Well, at least they're finally making strides. They were left behind for so long that they're... Hopefully it didn't lose too many people to other manufacturers, that actually now what they're doing will keep people, the regular Nikon shooters, happy.
They're still... And, the thing is, like, they're still missing... they're missing the R5, basically. Yeah. That's what they're missing. They've updated the Z6 and the Z7, the Z7 II. That's all great. But what they really need is a Z8 sitting in there, which would be sort of the equivalent of the R5, I guess. Yeah. And that's just a gaping hole there. And of course, it's a prime opportunity for Canon in that segment, because they've just,
Yeah. Are we expecting the R3 to trump the R5?
Yeah, so the R3, as I understand it, yes, the R3 is going to be basically the D6 equivalent for for Canon.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a completely different. It's a different thing. I'm almost like expecting the video specs not to be as good as the R5, because that's not the point for this camera.
Right.
The the point for those cameras is like a high shooting speed, so that especially when you're shooting things like sports, for example, that gives you an advantage when you can literally hammer out, tons of frames. So it's going to be a lot faster than the R5. Ideally, with a resolution somewhere in the same ballpark, about 45 megapixels or something. Because previously, you got to remember that not too long ago, those kind of cameras would produce images, that would be like 16 megabytes or something, or megapixels even.
Yeah.
16 to 24. So they would be relatively low res in a sense, but you just get tons of images.
Which is fine, low res, well, in inverted commas.
Yeah, exactly. In inverted commas, because all of that's of course nonsense. I mean,
lower res than some other cameras. That's probably a better way to put it. It's more than enough. It just is.
Yeah, it's I mean, we've talked about this several times, and it's interesting, talking to guests on the show, excuse me, who are like, who are specialists in very particular fields. Like for instance, event shooters, for example, it really is an advantage if you have a higher megapixel camera, because you can now zoom in, a lot more, and you can basically look at the whole shot and then zoom in on a particular scene within that shot and make that the main focus of the image. And you have that advantage because now the overall file is a higher resolution. That is very cool. So if you shot something like that on like a 12 megapixel camera or something like that, then of course you just can't do that, because then things start to fall apart. If you're shooting sports, you don't have to crop in like that. So it almost makes no sense. Nothing ever gets printed in a magazine or online or in a newspaper at that resolution anyway. So, what is the point? So you'd rather go for a camera that can produce more frames per second, which of course will then fill your buffer up, because all of these images have to be transported onto the card. So the card needs to be fast enough to save. The buffer needs to be big enough and fast enough to take 30 images per second in. And, 30 images that are 45 megapixels, that's a lot more data than 30 images that are only 12 megapixels. So, all of that technology has to come along to make that possible in the first place. So cards have, they wouldn't work on an SD card. SD cards are just not fast enough for that rate of data transfer. So that's where the bottleneck would be with that. So, it's one of these horses for courses type of situation.
Yeah. In me, God, sound northern. In my C70, they take this is how little attention I pay to this kind of stuff sometimes. The faster SD cards. Mm-hmm. So they're doing something like 200 megabytes a second, if not slightly more, and that's to be able to do 4K 120.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to keep up. So, but they're expensive. They're not twice the price. They're more than twice the price of the fastest regular SD card. Yeah. More than twice. 128 gig. Oh, I dread to think it's about 150 quid or something like that, or more.
Yeah.
Really expensive.
Yeah, that's the same. It's the same with XQD cards. They're just considerably more expensive. Yeah. Apparently more reliable. That's what I say.
All right. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I've only ever once had a problem with an SD card.
Yeah, I've never had one. I don't think I've had an issue. I don't remember an issue. But I always backup record anyway, regardless.
Yeah.
Always have done.
I mean, years and years and years ago. This goes back to like 2005. Actually, 2005. I remember exactly when it was. 2005. I had a little Canon point and shoot digital camera that was something like 3 megapixels or something at the time.
Woohoo!
I know, it's crazy. But I went on a trip to New York, and I went to a friend's wedding, and then we stayed in Manhattan and in New Jersey for a while. Mm-hmm. And all the pictures that I took, because the SD card was corrupted, was screwed.
God.
Yeah, it literally just it basically, the top half of the image turned green or was missing. So it's completely unusable. So that was really the only time, pretty much, that I had total SD card failure. But then again, that was so long ago that SD cards probably weren't as reliable as they are today anyway.
Yeah.
And that camera was shit too. So.
You know, you have to wonder how much responsibility is on the camera itself as well that causes some of those problems with the SD card, and that corrupts it.
Some of those shots actually look quite arty, especially the ones where like the top half was green. It was slightly pixelated and green, and I kind of thought, I know I was drunk at the time, but nevertheless, you know.
So what actually happened? There's nothing wrong with the SD card. All you did was you put a bit of tape over the top half of the lens and got a magic marker in green and just scribbled on it.
I mean, what was a little bit depressing really was the fact that, you know, this was like a friend's wedding, and she emailed me a few months after the wedding and said like, oh, I know you've taken lots of pictures, you know, would you mind sending them over? And I just had to get back to her and say like, I'm afraid they're all ruined. You know, I'm so sorry. Obviously, I wasn't the official photographer. It's just that she wanted to see the images.
No.
So, yeah.
Oh well, it happens occasionally.
Yeah. So that's one more thing I found when I was scouring the relatively recent photography news that made me think a little bit. So let's see, you know, what you think about this. So there's a woman who was upset that a photo of her mourning mother was sold on Getty Images. And so here's the thing. So the backstory is a photographer took pictures. Do you remember the recent case in Canada where like literally hundreds of children, they found sort of graves for hundreds of children at like boarding schools, right?
Yeah.
And so they put up, and of course, you know, shocking discovery, and there were some memorials that were put in place. And so this lady was mourning at one of the memorials, and this freelance photographer took a picture of the scene and then put it on a stock photo site, and happened to be Getty Images. And then obviously that photo was up for sale, and it, you know, appeared somewhere online, and I think that lady's daughter saw it, and then, you know, was very upset about the fact that her mother should be in a photograph at a memorial like that. And so she obviously legally, it turns out there's really nothing she could do because it was in a public space, and so, you know, there wasn't a conflict with any privacy laws or anything. It was just almost like just a kind of a moral stance, you know, that she thought it was just improper for somebody to take a photo of her mother mourning at this memorial, and then, you know, and then they basically turn it into a profit-making photograph. So she just, you know, thought I was.
Okay. So describe the photo to me.
So the photo was
one.
Yeah. So the photo was literally
part
just
of a larger scene.
Yeah, it was just literally of a lady in the shot mourning at this memorial. The Getty's defense was that this particular image was in the public interest because the whole, you know, that whole scenario is of public interest, of course. And so therefore, so this image wasn't sold on a commercial license. It's for editorial use only. So, you know, you wouldn't necessarily see this image in a commercial or in an advert. But I mean, I get her argument that she thought it was, you know, it was disturbing to her to see her mother, or a picture of her mother mourning. On the other hand, of course, I guess there is a public interest in, and the law is quite clear on, you know, when and where photographs can be taken. I mean, it's not too dissimilar in this country, of course, where as long as you're in a public space, you can take a photo of anyone.
Yeah. It's a tough one. It's a, you know, I don't think I see an issue with it personally. There is potentially a line between, how we're actually thinking about this right now, and is it morally right to share an image of someone who's, grieving at a memorial? That's a difficult one. It is a difficult one, but I think I'm falling down on the side of I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, I think what's difficult in a sense is that the law is actually very clear on it, and the problem with how we're viewing those, or the problem with like the moral compass as it is, that really shifts dramatically over time.
Yes, it does.
We were watching only the other day. We were watching a video on TV adverts from the like 80s, 70s, all the way back to the 50s or something, and we were shocked. We were absolutely, I found that shocking. Some of the stuff that people thought was okay to put in a TV advert nowadays would not only be completely unacceptable, and we would perceive them as morally wrong, but some of them were just outright racist by modern standards.
Yeah,
do you know full
completely,
on? Yeah, completely racist. So, so it's a difficult thing, really. It brings us back to something that we've discussed in the past. Where, when let's say you're doing some street photography and somebody who happens to be in a photo objects to you taking a photograph, and what do? You may be legally well within your rights to take this photo. But do you respect the other person's opinion or attitude and therefore delete the photograph? Or do you basically put your foot down and go like, well, no, actually, I'm perfectly allowed to, take this photo. Do you know what I mean? So do you respect somebody else's wishes for privacy? Or do you just, go with the letter of the law? So I think it's for me, this is like a similar thing here. I think if I was the photographer and I would have, and those objections would have been put to me, I personally would have probably taken the photo down, I think.
You see, there's the difference though with this one, and this is where actually you need to question the morality of it a little bit more, is that there's one thing a street photographer taking a shot of someone let's just say in that situation of someone mourning and they're perfectly within the rights to take it, and that being shared as part of a body of work that they've got. All right, that's it. It is different if they then upload that to Getty or wherever and sell that image. I think there's a slight line between those two. It's very thin, but I think there is a line there between them. And I think then going ahead and profiting from it, where the person in the image objects to being in that image, that does fall slightly more on the, is it really worth upsetting this person as much as we're upsetting them to stand by, the law, what you're legally allowed to do? I don't know. I
tell you what, maybe
that's a really
because I'm relatively confused about this. So maybe this might be the one occasion where we should ask our audience to see what they think. So what do you think? Let us know. Get in touch. You can send us a DM on Instagram, or you can send us an email at camerashakepodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook. It'd be really interesting to see or leave a comment. If you're on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment in the comments below. It'd be really interesting to see what people think about this. Was this photographer right to take this photo and then, make it available for editorial use on Getty Images because it is in the public interest, or was he wrong because clearly a family member has objections, and therefore the photo should be removed. What do you think? Let us know. It'd be super interesting to hear how you feel about this, because it's not a clear. I don't think it's a clear cut black and white type of scenario. It's quite
It's not. It's a insane. It's fully grey. It's 50% grey, and it's just. So I find that very difficult to answer. I could fall down on both sides here, and it all. I think it really comes down to the ultimate end use of that image.
Yeah, I mean, it's like many things, isn't it? It's the use of it that's the determining factor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, again, this is one of those, occasionally you come across a story like this where you think like, I really don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Like, there's no clear cut answer. So, again, it'd be super interesting to hear from you out there to see what you think.
Definitely.
Now, that being said, let me just say this again. If you are in Birmingham at the photography show on the 19th or the 20th of September, come and hit us up there. It'd be great to see you there. I think we've pretty much come to the end of this week's episode.
So just to clarify, that in this country, that's Birmingham.
What did I say?
Birmingham.
The Birmingham.
Birmingham.
How do you say Birmingham? Is it
Birmingham?
Birmingham.
Sorry, Midlands folk.
Well, so if you want to meet us at the Birmingham photography show on the 19th and 20th of September, come and hit us up there. We'll be lurking about somewhere.
Amazing.
So yeah, it'd be super awesome to see you there. Again, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, come and see us in full Technicolor over on YouTube, and drop us a like, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, all of that good stuff. That would really help us out. And we will see you again in a week's time. And we have some really interesting, very cool guests coming up over the next few weeks.
We do.